everyone. I'm just giving people time to join. Yeah, I can see people joining, so a few more seconds so everybody can join in. Okay. Time now to start our startup seminar for tonight. So hello everyone and welcome to the startup seminar series. I'm your host Rui and 2 seminars left now. I cannot believe that it's Christmas already and we are hoping, or the team is hoping in fact, to end the term with a bang. So time for our usual reminders. So next week we see the return of Cressy Wesling. Cressy is a Canadian-born Kent-based multi-award winning entrepreneur. And after a meeting with a London Fire Brigade in 2005, she has launched Alvi and Cress, which is turning industrial waste into lifestyle products, and 50% of the profits go back to charities that are related to waste. This is a seminar not to miss. If you have your iPhone with you or your Android phone, do scan that QR code so you can register for the final startup seminar. Also coming up next Friday, we have the deadline for the City Spark COVID-19 Recovery Challenge, and we are welcome ideas that enable a faster and better recovery, and this will help us build a stronger and more balanced economy. We have 4 prizes of £1,000 each for grabs, so do not miss. Apply now or apply before the 27th of November. And again, use the QR code, or you can visit cityspark.co.uk if you want to learn more about the competition. And to help you with your application for CitySpark, or if you have a business idea that you've been working on and you don't know what to do next, please do book an appointment with a member of the team. It could be myself or someone else, so we can discuss the idea further. If you are planning to apply for CitySpark, it's advisable that you book an appointment sooner rather than later, so we can help the best way we can to get your application submitted. And the last reminder would be, whether you are cool cats, business cats, or just an influencer cats, don't forget to follow us on social media. So we are on Instagram as at City Univentures. Someone else took the City Ventures, so we are on Instagram as City Univentures. Then on LinkedIn, you can find us as City Ventures, and for YouTube, again, just use the QR code and follow us. You can find everything as usual on city.ac.uk/entrepreneurship. And now it's time for us, for the second before last event, to welcome to the virtual stage Naeem Alvi, the founder of Notepad Studio. Hello, Naeem. Are you there? Hello,
mate.
Good to see you. How are you doing today?
Yes, very well, thank you, mate. Very pleased to be here.
I can see that just before we started our seminar today that you are on brand, so you brought the hoodie. So looking cool, looking on brand.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, mate.
If you do it for 5 seconds more, I might have to charge.
Yeah, so I'll make sure I sit like this.
So Naeem, just a bit of an introduction. I did my homework, so I'll be reading what I found about you. So Naeem is a brand strategist and founder of Notepad Studio. It has worked with a lot of big companies, just to name a few: RBS, NatWest, Nike, Argus, and he has been helping them growing as a brand. He then went to found Notepad to help connect startups and new ventures and create a better brand experience. So we went from bigger companies to SMEs, and you're helping them. And in fact, you actually been telling me that your business has been growing even during the pandemic, which is excellent news. I should also add that you are a board trustee at Heart of England, and you are also a guest lecturer at Warwick Business School. So impressive CV we have here. Before I give you the virtual stage name, we normally start with a round of questions just to get us going. So, do you want to tell us where you grew up?
Yeah, all right, man. So I was born in Birmingham and left at the age of 2 by choice. No, my family moved down south. So I grew up in the deepest countryside down in Devon. We lived in an actual forest growing up, so I was very, very rural. And then actually when I went to university even further south and went to Falmouth. So definitely a country bumpkin at heart, living in the city now.
And amazing landscapes, I'm sure. So what was family life like? So as a young kid traveling across the UK, I would say.
Yeah, well, quite crazy actually. So I'm one of 3 brothers. I'm the brother in the middle, which I think is why I'm quite competitive. I think because I always had the older brother who was better than me and the younger brother that I had to be better at. So there's like that constant competitive challenge. And I've got a sister as well, who's very, very successful in her own right, actually, and there's been a big inspiration to me. She's a director at WWF, so she does some amazing things with
Wow.
conservation and animals. Not the wrestling company, the animal charity. Although I like to pretend she works in wrestling. So yeah, quite a varied childhood, really. Lots of extreme sports, lots of surfing, lots of BMXing, because there's nothing else to do down in Devon. There's no the nearest town from where we lived was about 20 miles, so you had to get an either very long bus or beg your mum for a lift to get into town. So we ended up spending a lot of our childhood outside.
And you are an avid runner, you were telling me just before we started.
Yeah, well, I've become more of an avid runner during lockdown. I don't know if anyone watching this has found the same, but just this like desire to get outside. Obviously, none of the gyms are open, so I've set myself the challenge of running collectively 100k each month. And I just went for a run before this, actually, just put in a quick 10. So I feel quite shaky at the moment, but quite fired up.
Okay. The adrenaline is kicking in. Yeah. So, in terms of interest, when you were younger, what were the things that would rock your boat, so to say? What were your interests? What were the things that kept?
Yeah, well, I think the extreme sports played a really big part in my life, because for me it was about I would say adventure, but it was more about risk, I think. And I think it was more about pushing the boundaries a bit. There were countless times where me and my little brother would come back to the house and need to go to hospital because we'd broken a bone, or we'd fallen off our bike and got concussion or something like that. And she, my mum's a nurse, but even she, it still tested her own blood pressure, I think, at times. And then outside of that, I read a lot. I think I've always had a passion for words and writing and communication. And I think going through school, the things that I really enjoyed were the subjects that involve writing and comms, so kind of English language, English literature. And then I also became fascinated with psychology. I'm just really interested in how people's brains, work, and how you can influence behavior and that sort of thing, which really explains why I work in branding, because ultimately it's about communicating something to change behavior and influence change. So it's, I could have seen this 15 years ago, but I didn't know what branding was until later in my career.
Well, it comes naturally, and you mentioned 3 things: risk, communication, and psychology, all wrapped up in one nice package. So a question that I've been usually asking our panelists, or the people that come to the seminars is are you a thinker, a maker, or a fixer? So if we were to place you, or if we were to pick a persona that defines Naeem, what would that be?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think I'd like to be able to say I'm a maker, but I'm not. I think one of the things I've learned working in helping other businesses grow their brands is that product isn't my strength. I'm good at kind of articulating service propositions, so selling, branding, selling, marketing, that sort of thing. But physical product making, manufacturing, that's definitely not something that I'm skilled in. So I'd say I'm more of a fixer. I think I've got this like real, and I don't mean to sound like holier than thou when I say this, but I really like helping people, and I think that's why I ended up working in what is a consultancy. Basically, we're driven by trying to help other people solve their problems and to help them unlock growth, typically when they want to grow their business and they can't for whatever reason, and 9 times out of 10 branding can help with that. So yeah, I'd say I'm a fixer. I think I'm good at fixing problems. That's my strength.
Oh, you get the fixer badge then, Naeem.
Thanks.
Last question for me, and the stage is yours now. And to our audience, please send us your questions. We'll be answering them at the end of the session, but keep them coming. My last question is, so you know about branding. So do you want to tell us how this led you to becoming the founder of Notepad Studio? And
Okay.
Naeem, the stage is yours now.
Oh, cool. Okay. Do you want me to share my screen now or answer the question first and then share? Cool. Okay. Let me share. Right. Let me just go. Sorry, you're seeing inner workings of my computer. Presentation.
And there you go.
Cool.
It's working. Good luck.
Nice.
You on the other side.
Seamless. Thank you, Rui. And thanks to everyone else that's watching. Obviously, I can't see you, but I'm aware that we've got nearly 50 people here that've given up your evening to listen to me. So I'll do my best over the next sort of 20 minutes to add as much value as I can and to share as much useful information as I can from things I've learned. But like Rui said, if you do have any questions about branding, about my own experiences, about just growing a business or launching a business, is something that we've become particularly well versed in, then please do drop them in the Q&A, because I love the question bit at the end of this. This talk's all about how to build an awesome brand. I'll get into kind of why I ended up founding Notepad, but for my interest in branding really started, it was quite a sort of up and down career path. I don't think I took a linear route to get into branding. I started life as a journalist, just because I had that passion for writing that I mentioned, and had these aspirations, I guess, to use the written word to change the world for the better, and quickly got disillusioned with journalism when I realized that actually most papers have an agenda, and you're basically just filling space on a page, and often you can't influence change in that way. So I got a bit bored of just kind of reporting the facts, and started to look at marketing. Ended up working in writing for advertising for a few years, and then got a bit bored of advertising because I found it was quite short-lived. You kind of pour your heart and soul into a campaign, and big campaigns as well that would kind of be out there on the TV and stuff, but it would be this big investment of energy and creativity, and it would run for anything from kind of a month to 3 months or something if you're lucky, and then it disappears and the whole thing's gone again, and you have to think of another idea as to how you're going to advertise this brand. And actually, as my career went on, I took more and more interest in thinking about, well, I'd rather shape the whole experience. How can I, rather than just thinking about kind of the campaign that we're running to sell this certain product at this time of year, what can I do to influence the entire business, to help it grow? Because that's much more long term and much more strategic, which I really enjoy. Here's 4 photos of my face. I think it's important to start presentations with multiple photos of yourself. Really helps the ego. So I've probably covered most of this. So yeah, I'm a writer. In Notepads, my role is more of a creative director. I try and marry our designers and strategists work together. I'm an entrepreneur myself as well, so obviously I've founded Notepad, but I'm also a co-founder of a tech company and a shareholder in a product company, which gives me kind of both sides of the coin on how to kind of grow startups. I lecture on the Warwick MBA, and yeah, my passions really are ideas and creativity. So at Notepad, what do we do? So yeah, like Rue said, I a lot of my career was spent helping bigger brands to, to grow, to kind of move the needle by 1% and get new customers. And that was great. It's cool to have those brands on your CV, but it's not as fun as it sounds. You don't have as much control as you'd like. There's lots of red tape and kind of corporate bureaucracy with companies that size. And then what I found over time was that the projects I really enjoyed working on in the agencies I was working in were smaller businesses where I worked alongside the people that had come up with the idea and wanted to take that idea to more people and to grow their business for good reasons as well. Not just profit, but actually to challenge the way that things have been done, to move the industry forward, or to just completely revolutionize an industry by offering something that no one else offers. Those sorts of things really excite me. So I figured it was time to kind of take all that and start my own agency and kick things off just as a freelancer, and did lots of public speaking and managed to win some clients, and really quickly just won too many clients for me to help myself. So had to build a little team around me, and yeah, realized I was kind of running an agency without knowing I was. So that was when Notepad was born, and we turned 3 about 2 weeks ago, which was quite a milestone for us. So here's why we do it. I think personal experience I've seen, going back to my childhood again, but my dad was a bit of I'd say an entrepreneur, but that might be too kind. He was certainly ambitious in his business ventures and business ideas, but very few of them worked out. So we'd have these periods growing up of kind of ludicrous Christmases where you kind of get every gift that you've asked for, and then the next year you get nothing, because it was either he was launching a business that was doing well, or his business was going bankrupt and we had to sell the house and move and stuff. So I saw like both sides of how entrepreneurship can impact family. And as I kind of went through my own career, I saw so many smaller businesses launching, but without ever thinking about brand. And by that I mean not just the logo or the website, but how are they positioning themselves in the market? What is their key value proposition? What is the thing they're selling, and how are they articulating that so that their customers understand it immediately and want to buy it? And all of those things are things that so many SMEs, all the way up to sort of 5 million revenue, I was seeing, had never even thought about. They just kind of landed on this interesting idea and managed to grow this business without ever thinking about those bigger ideas that help companies scale. So our whole hypothesis with Notepad was, what if we can help early stage companies to get their brand strategy at a level that a massive business would be happy with, then surely we're going to reverse that failure rate for startups. And it's definitely working. Almost all of the businesses that we've been able to work with are still growing. The ones that aren't would normally come down to something else, like a co-founder dispute, or a pandemic, or something that was kind of out of our control. So yeah, in terms of what we actually do, I realize I'm using kind of lots of agency speak, but ultimately our main job is just helping early stage companies to define and design brands and help them launch into the market. We still do work with bigger businesses every now and again. If they've got an exciting new proposition that they want to launch into the market, and they've got a trusting way of working with us, then we'll definitely take it on. We've got experience in marketing brands from scratch, and I know you guys have your own ideas for businesses, and I'll talk through some of the ways that we help businesses get off the ground in a bit. But it is hard, growing a business from nothing is a difficult endeavor. But it's all about small steps and progress, and just doing things that are going to work. We do have some investors as well. Being so connected in the kind of startup SME space, we get people fishing around that want to invest their money in cool companies, so we can make those introductions. And yeah, with Notepad, I kind of have this selfish motivation as well in setting it up, in that I as much as I want to help all the businesses we work with, and we do genuinely get a lot of satisfaction from that. As a team, we're also pretty passionate about growing our own brands, products and services as well. So we kind of balance helping other businesses on a consultancy basis, and then coming up with our own ideas and growing them using the skills we have in-house and the experience we have from working with all these businesses to help us grow our own, which is quite fun. We're called Notepad, obviously, just because I'm a big believer in taking notes and writing things down. You're 30% more likely to remember something, apparently, if you write it down. So if you've got a pen in front of you or a digital version of a pen, then yeah, scribble stuff down if I say anything interesting. So yeah, I thought I'd kick off with just a bit of a summary of what branding actually is. I mentioned earlier that it's not your logo, but I think our industry probably is to blame for making branding something that is just incredibly confusing to most people, and rightfully so. We talk in such ridiculous terms and language that it's become so much more confusing than it needs to be. But this is the way we define it. So brand is ultimately about perception. Your business exists, and it could sell exactly the same product as the business next door, but if people perceive your business to be better value, or having a stronger purpose, or just being a more fun company to work with, they're more likely to choose you. And that's really what brand is about, is trying to get a perception out there that you can build consistently, that appeals to your target audience and gives you that advantage, both commercially with money, and creatively with the way that you market yourself. And the way that branding actually leads to growth as a company this is a really crude way of kind of breaking it down, but ultimately this is what we see. If you put out a consistent message, a consistent look and feel, a consistent experience for your customers, over time, people will start to recognize that. You'll start to build some recognition as to what that business stands for, what they care about, what they do really well, what they don't do well, all of those things. And over time, if it kind of resonates with you, you'll start to trust them. And then really the holy grail, if you can get to that point, and you may have brands that you consider yourself loyal to, but is getting to loyalty, a brand that you don't only trust, but something that you'll recommend to your friends and your peers and your family. Word of mouth marketing is 6 times more powerful than any other form of marketing. So really, from our perspective, that's our metric. How do we get people to recommend this company to other people? Because if we're doing that, then we're building a brand. We're building something of value that doesn't require massive marketing spend. And there is there's financial reason for being brand driven, or brand led as we call it. So making the brand the front and center of the business, and everything else kind of feeding into that. And there's evidence to show that brand driven or brand led companies are twice as profitable. So that's a great stat for me when I'm selling to companies as well. But what company wouldn't want to be more profitable? Profit is the oil, the fuel that kind of drives the fun of having a business. If you have cash, then you can hire great people, you can invest in cool experiences, new products, new markets, all those sorts of things. So profit is key. Yeah, we did get asked as well, why does branding increase revenue? Why should your brand have an impact on how much money comes into the business? And these are the key reasons, I'd say, that brands grow. And it's firstly, really simply, your customers understand you. If you've managed to articulate what you do in 10 or less words, and it's front and center on the website, and it's more appealing than your competitors, then people are more likely to buy from you, and they're more likely to choose you first. That's point 2 then. Point 3, your customers come back again and again. I'm sure you guys will have brands that you really like, and you buy more than one time from. I certainly do, and that's branding that does that. There's no reason for you to stick with that one brand, but it's something about it that's keeping you there. And like I said, your customers recommend you. That's where a huge amount of growth comes from with brand. Why does it increase profit? Really simply, quality brands can charge more, and that's not to be capitalist and take money where you shouldn't and stuff, but ultimately, if what you're selling is of value, then it's easier for you to to warrant a higher price point. And I'll talk you through a business we've been working with for the past 3 years, but that has a ludicrously high price point and how we've made that work. But yeah, you can open up the doors to charge more and be in that premium space. Really important one as you scale. If you are going to hire teams and grow a company, it's all about vision and getting your staff aligned behind what your brand actually stands for. And having that clear vision, clear proposition really does make your people more productive and does make it easier for them to sell whatever you make or offer to the world. Customers will spend more with you. It's obvious. We buy from brands that we like, and we're happy to spend a bit more. And yeah, this is the big one really from a branding versus marketing perspective. You can. There's a really good case study for this actually. There's Adidas, the chief marketing officer or global chief marketing officer for Adidas recently came out kind of publicly on one of the advertising blogs and said that they'd really taken their eye off brand. And what he meant by that was that they'd focused all of their marketing budget on short-term wins. So they pushed it all into digital marketing, into Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google PPC, all the things that do get you kind of day-to-day sales, and forgotten about this long-term effort that you have to put into building brand. And when you're up against someone like Nike, who really are the I'd say the best at building that consistent kind of just do it image in the market, obviously you're going to suffer. And yeah, he just kind of said that we're going to completely change our approach now and focus more on brand again and stop spending so much on kind of short-term tactics. And the reason for that, the way I always articulate it, is that marketing is all about pushing your product out there. You're investing money to get your product and service out there, whereas brand is something that pulls people in. And if you have a strong enough brand, then there's absolutely no reason you have to spend much. People are drawn to buy and to support brands that they find value in. Where money comes in, and often it does in the kind of startup, particularly the tech landscape, is just growing faster. And that's where a lot of investment is raised and often wasted, is plowing it into how can we grow this business in 6 months rather than 6 years kind of thing, which is purely just to give the investors back the money that they want. So how do we do it? How do we kind of go through that process? If you guys are kind of looking at launching your business, I thought I'd just touch on the process that we go through when we take a new brand to market. So here are some of the brands that we've worked with over the last 3 years. Some of them, we've created. They were just a product when they came to us and came up with a name and a logo and the proposition and the story and all that sort of thing. And some of them are obviously much more established brands that were struggling to win or to lead in their market, so needed a bit of a push to get there. But with all those businesses, and no matter what size they are or what industry they're in, we always go through this process, and this is the process that ultimately I'd recommend you take your own business through in some form. So you want to kick things off with some form of validation. So for us, the most effective means of doing that is customer interviews, target customer interviews. So if you can talk about the brand that you're building and talk about what you think that brand is going to offer to the world and why that's important, and you see that the customers you're speaking to agree with you, then you're getting some form of validation. You're getting to understand if you've got a good idea or not, basically. And you can do that from a branding perspective as well as a business perspective. So for us, it's things like why would you choose one brand over another when you're buying this sort of product, kind of thing. So you get those insights that then can feed into your key messaging and your website copy, that sort of thing. The strategy is like I said, the proposition, so the written side of the brand, so the story, the mission, the vision, the values, the tone of voice, the way that you sound, that sort of thing. It's the thing I love as a writer. That's where I really enjoy working with businesses. And then obviously once you've got that strategy set where you know where you're going to play in the market, you know your price point, you know who your customers are, it's much easier to go through to identity, so the visual look and feel of your business, because you know who you're building the brand for. It's not for you, you know, it's not something that, unless your target customers are, you know, the same demographic as you, it's unlikely that you should be building a brand that just you love. You know, you should be building something that your customers love. So looking at a kind of design from that perspective, and then launch. You know, don't just create a website or a brand and expect the customers to, you know, to roll in, which I still see with, you know, serial entrepreneurs. They expect, you know, if you build the most beautiful website in the world, then suddenly you've got a successful company. But it's hard work, you know, to win customers. Winning your first customer is a huge milestone, and then it's just winning more, you know, and keeping them if you're on a retained kind of model. So looking at how you're going to launch effectively and creatively in the market, and I'll talk through some of the ways we've done that with a few clients shortly. Yeah, so I thought I obviously I can't touch on like absolutely everything I'd recommend in terms of building your own brand, but these are 5 of the things that really stand out to me in the businesses we work with, no matter what size they are, and also what I've learned as a founder of my own business and a couple of other companies as well. These are the things I kind of wish I'd been told before I sort of looked at launching. And you will have heard this, I'm sure, from some of the other speakers that you've heard on this series, and just in the wider world at the moment, because it's so pertinent that we're all really closely looking at brands at the moment to see how they're behaving, particularly when the pandemic kicked off. You know, we were looking at what businesses were doing. Some fared really well, you know, Brewdog with their kind of hand sanitizer sort of thing, if anyone saw it. Dyson created 15,000 ventilators, you know, for free. All of those things are amazing brand building tools, because they're great for the world, but obviously, you know, it helps to communicate what those businesses are known for and great at. On the flip side, you had things like, you know, Sports Direct that laid off all their staff and did terrible things where kept people working even when they shouldn't have been working, those sorts of things. And you saw those stories in the media. So, you know, it's very much a time to be clear on what you stand for as a business. And just as an example of that, just wanted to touch on a brand that I love called Hyatt Denim. I don't know if anyone would have heard of it. If you may have, because Meghan Markle wore a pair of their jeans last year, which kind of, you know, exploded their growth. But yeah, it's a company in the west of Wales, in a town called Cardigan, if anyone's ever been there. So it's a really rural part of the world. You know, it's kind of countryside, lots of rain, lots of sheep, not very many people, and not somewhere really that you would think to launch a global jeans company. But David did, and he's a huge believer in purpose. He wrote a book actually called Do Purpose that I'd really recommend reading. But yeah, this is Hyatt Denim, and if I just read through their story, you'll kind of get a sense of what they stand for and what I mean by purpose. So, our town is going to make jeans again. Cardigan is a small town of 4,000 good people. 400 of them used to make jeans. They made 35,000 pairs a week for 3 decades. Then one day the factory closed, it left town, but all that skill and know-how remained, without any way of showing the world what they could do. That's why we've started the Hyatt Denim Company, to bring manufacturing back home, to use all that skill on our doorstep, and to breathe new life into our town. As one of the Grand Masters said to me when I was interviewing, this is what I know how to do, this is what I do best. I just sat there thinking, I have to make this work. So yes, our town is going to make jeans again, here goes. So David wrote that, you know, kind of right at the beginning of launching Hyatt Denim, and a few years on, I've made it out to their factory in Cardigan a while ago. They've just moved back into the original factory that closed down, so they've got 80 people in there now of the original 400 staff that were in there. So they're well on their way to rebuilding this company with this amazing purpose at the center of what they do. And what's amazing when you speak to David about the power of that story and the power of that purpose, As he said when he launched the company, he's an amazing human being, and he does incredible things, but he's actually quite introverted. He doesn't like public speaking. Bizarrely, he did the keynote at Facebook to 5,000 people last year, but even so, he doesn't hugely love public speaking, and has to prepare every word he's going to say and that sort of thing. So when he was getting comfortable with telling his brand story, he said his technique was to go down to the shed in the evening and set up a camera and film himself saying his story to camera, which is a pretty odd experience for any human. And then he'd take it back inside and he'd sit on the sofa with his 2 teenage daughters, and they'd all watch it back, and his teenage daughters would take the mick out of him and mock him as their father, trying to be cool. But he got so good at it and so comfortable with saying it that he had no problem, telling that story to anyone that would listen. And he said it took a couple of years, and then one day, I think it was Channel 4 gave him a call because they'd heard about this factory in Wales, asked the story. He literally said, what I've just read out. And they did a half an hour documentary on Hyatt Denim. And then next week, Vice Magazine phoned. He did exactly the same thing. They did a huge piece on their website about him. And they've just continued to leverage this purpose to the point where it filters through to their products as well, which is really cool. I'm in lockdown at the moment, so I'm wearing jogging bottoms, but I'd normally be wearing a pair of their jeans. And what's really nice is when you get a pair, and you look inside, there'll be someone's autograph, someone's signature on the inside of the jeans. Because like David said, like artists always sign their work, which is really nice. It'll say something like Becky or Luke or something like that, but you just get a sense that it's handcrafted and made. So yeah, and also just as an aside, if you are going to launch your business, as you probably can tell from this, like they are incredible at marketing. So sign up to the newsletter, sign up to or start following David on social media, just because he's a genius when it comes to kind of small business marketing and growth. So yeah, have a strong story and have a strong purpose. And ultimately at the center of that, the reason I enjoy doing these is because I like talking about Notepad, because I love it. I love what we're building, and we always get asked, how can I make my customers love me or love my brand? And ultimately it just starts with you loving it more than anyone. You need to be willing to stand up on stage and talk about what you're building and why you're building it, and over time people will start to listen and pay attention. And I firmly believe the reason we've been able to grow such a great team at Notepad and manage to, I'm in Birmingham now, so I live, despite my disparaging comments about Birmingham earlier, I live in Birmingham now, very happily. But I've been able to pull some amazing talent from London to Birmingham. They've moved house for us. We've just hired a guy that's left North London to move to Birmingham to work for us, which is hugely flattering. And I still have to pinch myself sometimes when I hear people are willing to move to work for us. But I think it just comes down to the fact that we love what we're doing and we love what we're growing. So second point, don't, if you are going to launch a business, try not to launch into a market where there are lots of people selling exactly the same thing as you, or at least selling it in exactly the same way. So there's a great book if you're into reading. It is pretty heavy, but we've got loads of time on our hands with lockdown at the moment, called Blue Ocean Strategy. But the basic premise is that most businesses operate in a red ocean, because there's lots of sharks eating the fish, eating the customers, and the sea is red as a result. And if you can find a way to just operate in a blue ocean, a completely a space that's clear of competitors, then obviously growth will be easier. So just an example of a business that we rebranded a few years ago that I think do this really well. So e-automation, I thought this was going to be such a boring project when we started it, but it turned out to be wicked. They're a company that basically, if you were Coca-Cola and your machine broke in your factory that puts the lids on the bottles, your only option in terms of fixing that machine is to phone the people that made it, typically someone like Siemens, and ask them, our machine's broken, we're losing £1 million an hour. what do we need to do to fix it? And they would say, you need to replace the whole thing and it's going to cost you 50 million quid. So these guys had the idea of just stockpiling a load of parts that would be really useful for factories. And, you know, they're not the only business in the world that does this, but what we were able to do, if you look at their competitors, if you ever get around to Googling obsolescent machine parts or something, you'll see that the industry is just so boring and dull, and you know, it's very much a transactional experience. There's no personality, there's no customer service. So with e-automation, we ended up with the strategy of focusing on them just delivering more on every level of what they do. So better customer service, better parts, better speed, all those things, and it became the driving mantra of the business, really. And the stats down there, you know, we in the 2 years since we rebranded them, they went from 11 to 36 million. I actually went and visited them just before lockdown, about 3.5 years, I guess, since I'd worked with them. And they're turning over 85 million, which is, you know, absolutely nuts. And I'm not saying it was us, you know, that purely drove that growth. I'm sure we helped. And when I asked John, the marketing director, what it was that unlocked it, he was like, you gave us a lovely brand, we've got a great logo, you know, lovely website, and those things definitely help. You know, it does help us to convert customers, but what you really did was kickstarted a bit of a movement internally. You fired up our team, and you got them excited about where we were going, and that's something that we're seeing more and more in the work that we do. It's ultimately about getting people aligned behind something exciting. You know, if you're going to spend a third of your life at work, you want to be working on something cool, don't you? So that's what we focus on. And just like proud moment there as well, I managed to get them to agree on launching the brand to their staff. They got on brand confetti in confetti cannons, which is like, you know, how brand can you get? And they cost like $2,000 just for me to press at the end of the presentation. But proudest moment of my career. So yeah, if you're thinking about your own brand, you know, have a think about where you can operate that isn't going to be, you know, so difficult to compete. So ultimately focus on what is it that your customers actually want, and what is it that you actually do best. You know, as an agency with Notepads, you know, there are 22,000 agencies in the UK. It's really hard for an agency to have a unique proposition in the market. But we know what we're really good at, and it's you know, as well as doing the branding stuff, like I said, we're really good actually at firing people up and getting people excited about their brand. And actually, if you look at other branding agencies, no one else really talks about that. It's kind of a secondary, you know, kind of happy accident for some agencies, whereas it's something we really focus on. So that's what sets us apart as a brand, and that's how I start conversations with businesses. That's how we structure our content. All of those things come from what is it that sets us apart in the market, and what is it our customers want. And you know, customers want engaged teams. You know, they want people to be excited about coming to work, and they want to attract great talent. So that's what we focus on. We don't worry about what our competitors, you know, do better than us. You know, we can't possibly compete with an agency of 700 people when we're 8 people. You know, we've got to win on the things that we're great at. So make sure you do the same. This is just a really cool philosophy that I was told a while back, which I think is so true, and I'll talk through an example of seeing this in action. But you know, when you're building your business, your first 100 customers will have such an amazing customer experience because they'll probably be buying directly from you, and you've got this passion for what you're building. And ultimately, if you can think about them as your fans, you know, the real die-hard fans of your company, and you can get 100 of those, so you can get 100 people out there that have bought your product, love everything you do, will recommend you to everyone, will defend you if you fall foul in the market, and you've got a sales team of 100 people, you know. And that's where with Hyatt Denim, you know, David doesn't know that I'm here now talking about his jeans brand in West Wales, but he's done it. You know, he's convinced me to be a true fan, and I tell everyone about that business because I think it's amazing. To try and do the same, and just a little case study to bring this to life. So this was our first customer actually at Notepad, a guy called Thomas in Manchester. That's a an amazing product inventor. But as a human being, he's what I would describe as a kind of combination of Willy Wonka from the Chocolate Factory, and Liam Gallagher. So he's like unbelievably creative and inventive and sort of quite wacky, but so rude to people, and he has no filter on his mouth, and he will say whatever. So he created this his first product was this fine bone china mug that's self-heating, so it charges wirelessly, looks like a normal mug, and then when you make a tea or coffee in it, it turns on when your drink drops to the perfect temperature at 65 degrees, and holds the drink at that temperature for an extra hour. So a ludicrously unnecessary product for the world, very luxury, not going to solve any major world crisis, but quite a nice idea. And the challenge with this brand actually as well is, I mentioned this earlier with price point, the mugs are 129 quid, or they start at 129 quid. So if there's ever a challenge, in building a brand, it's a product that people don't really need for a ludicrously high price point. So how do you do that? And yeah, I mean, Thomas has really taken the 100 true fans thing the further than anyone I've ever seen. So he's the sort of person that when someone orders one of his mugs through the website, if it's within like a 50-mile radius, and obviously this is pre-lockdown, he'll happily drive to their house unannounced, turn up on a Sunday or something while they're eating their Sunday dinner, knock on the door and ask them if he can come in for a cup of tea. And he's just building this little army of people that are now his best friend. And it was really cool. A while ago we went on we've been on TV a few times actually, because like I said, he's pretty good for TV, but he went on this program called Give It a Year with Karen Brady, and the idea was that Karen would give you come and see you before you launch the business and listen to your idea and give you some advice, and then a year later she'd come back and see how you were doing and whether you listened to her. And all the other people on the show were really humble. They were like, we just want to sell 1,000 products, or we just want to get in one retailer. Thomas went full on Liam Gallagher and was like, we'll be in every retailer in the UK, will be the Lamborghini of mugs, all this sort of rubbish, which obviously Karen hated. And as the people that are responsible for their brand, it was a bit of a disaster just sitting there on the sofa watching it on TV as this brand falls apart in front of your eyes. But what was really cool in this whole True Fans thing was that Thomas has built this little army of friends. So I've just pulled a few of them out of here, but the best thing about social media, people kicked off obviously, and they were saying things like £129 for a mug, you'd have to be a mug to spend that much money, really good stuff like that. And and loads of Thomas's fans just took to social media to defend the business, which was awesome to see, and really to me showed the how worthwhile it is to have those loyal diehard customers in the early days. And what was really interesting was sales increased that day as well, and largely that was existing customers just buying another mug, just to support the company, which is awesome, and I think brings the point to life. Fourthly, and I will rattle through these because I know we're short on time. Great piece of advice I was given early on. If someone out there has kind of made all the mistakes that you're about to make, so don't be afraid to ask for help. And we take the same approach to building brands. So this is a brand we worked on, pretty niche business. So she's a hat maker that lives a few miles from me actually, a milliner. And yeah, she wanted to launch into a market that was dominated by people that either knew the royal family or were friends with people from Made in Chelsea. That was pretty much the way to grow a millinery brand in the UK. So we had to find a way to make it unique. And we were really struggling, how do you set this apart? So I ended up managing to get a phone call with the vice editor of Elle magazine, the fashion magazine, and just asked her about millinery and her thoughts on it. And she just said, like in passing, what really struck her as odd with millinery is that in every other part of fashion, we have these laws against using, exploiting animals and using fur and using, those sorts of things that we're not supposed to use in clothing. Yet in millinery, it's all still allowed. They've got kind of beaver skin hats and feathers and all the stuff that the rest of the fashion world seems to have caught up to. So yeah, we launched the world's first vegan millinery, which is something I'd never thought would be on my CV, but the brand's gone from strength to strength. She has made hats for royals now and stuff. So it's been a huge success. And if we hadn't asked that lady for help, then we never would have learned that insight. And yeah, personally for me as well, mentors have been a huge thing in growing my businesses. So I'm a big believer in finding people out there that have already done what you're trying to do. And this is one of my mentors. It's a guy called Mills that runs an agency called Us Two in London. They're, something like a £30 million turnover company. They've got offices in 7 or 8 countries now, I think. And they make some amazing games as well. But yeah, they he's been through the whole thing of kind of growing a business from scratch to that size in the same field as me. So I reached out to him, and this on the right here is actually 4 questions that I just emailed him, and he ended up very fortunately then doing a whole podcast on it with his co-founder, and then after that ended up agreeing to mentor me. But just having those people around you when you're growing a business to be able to ask a question and get an answer of yes, do that, or don't do that because it's going to lead to this, it cuts out so much wasted time and so many mistakes. So yeah, ask for help. Ask as many people as you can for help, and don't be afraid to. That's how they got to where they got to. They're all willing to ask for help too. And yeah, this the final point is, when we're thinking about launching new businesses, tomorrow, I'm sure if we wanted to as a team, we could launch a brand that makes, nice hats or something, nice caps with a cool logo on them. But then, there are a million other businesses doing that. So it's not very exciting for us, and actually would be really hard to grow beyond a certain point. So if you are going to build a business, then try and define convention. Don't follow it at all. Which actually just brings us to the work we did with Nike running a couple of years ago, where they were really struggling in getting people to firstly to use the Nike Running Club app, and secondly to actually use the Nike running stores as a bit of a hub for the running community, which is what they always wanted them to be about. And we ended up spending some time with some of their running clubs and going on a few runs, and basically we learned that there was this huge disconnect between the running communities, which are all about these local heroes and friendship and, kind of building bonds on a personal level, and then Nike, which is all about, Usain Bolt and completely unobtainable ambitions. So we ended up rethinking the in-store experience to focus much more on the runners themselves, focusing on celebrating the local heroes on the walls, holding more events in store, starting the runs from the store to another store. And it's huge success. They rolled it out in Covent Garden to start with, and then they've taken that across Europe now, which is really cool to see. But even Nike, can forget that actually don't be just like your competitors. Don't be Adidas. Find a way to define the way that these experiences should work. So yeah, ultimately, in terms of your brand, strong purpose, relatively uncontested market space, diehard customers, transparency in your communications, and a unique brand identity will win. And none of those things require huge amounts of cash, just huge amounts of thinking. Some key takeaways there, which I think I've probably touched on, but I thought I'd include in case I forget anything. Just a final point there, actually. Launching a company, there's kind of this obsession at the moment, and we work with loads of investment-backed businesses, but don't worry about investment to start with. To get investment, you need a few customers anyway. So find a way to get a few customers, and then worry about raising cash if you have to. My advice is don't bother if you can build a business using profit at a relatively good rate, and it gives you the lifestyle that you want, then there's no need to be beholden to investors. some good books worth reading as well. Like I said, I'm all about the words, love reading. So in priority order, our newsletter at the top. Feel free to subscribe. But yeah, some other really good books I've read there recently, which I'd really recommend. This one actually is no one will know about. Just a great designer in New York that has kind of articulated exactly how to design a brand identity step by step. It really helps me to see how our designers think, because I'm a writer. I'm not particularly a visual person, so that's really helped me to understand the design side of branding as well. So I'd recommend reading that. Boom, get out there and grow something noteworthy. And yeah, thanks for your time. I'll answer any questions now, but yeah, give me a shout as well if you want to. I'm very passionate about small businesses, so feel free to take my details and give me a shout after if you want to.
Naeem, well done. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
I was just taking photos of the book recommendations there. I could recognize a few, but I wanted to add a few more for my Christmas wish lists. Thank you so much for your time. I can see that we have a few questions coming in, so please do keep them coming. And I'll start with the first one, which I think is a very interesting one, particularly given how many good examples you gave us. So how did you build such a great network? For example, you said that you mentioned that you've been talking to the fashion editor from Elle. So how did you manage to grow this network and have this network, really?
That's a good question. I don't know. No, I'd say the fashion editor at Elle is a complete, that's an outlier. That was me just finding her name, sending her an email and seeing if she'd have a chat, and she said yes, which was, doesn't normally work like that. But one of the big things I've with Notepad particularly that I've focused on is finding good partners. So finding strategic partners that can help grow the business, or can help make introductions, or can offer me opportunities like this. I met Alex actually on David Hyatt's farm in Wales, because Alex was there as well from City Venture. But those connections are absolutely everything. There's an old saying with one of the biggest agencies in the world, M&C Saatchi. The original Saatchi always says that we built this business on lunches. I just had more lunches than any other agency. I just met more people and had more lunches, and I mean, what a life. But he grew, what was the most successful agency in the world for a while. So it's about getting out there. It's about, I've like I said, I do a lot of public speaking. I didn't always like public speaking. I wasn't a particularly confident speaker. I've always believed if you do something enough, you'll eventually get good at it. So I just put myself out there and got on the stage as many times as I could, and it opened up doors, really. And ask for help, that opens up doors massively. There's that old saying, ask for money, you'll get advice. Ask for advice, you'll get money. And absolutely, that's true. Ask people for help.
I like that model. Ask for money, they give you advice. Then they give you advice. Ask for money. Okay, cool. A quick question for me, actually, is twofold. But the first question is, you mentioned validation, strategy, identity, and launch as the natural steps. Are they natural, as in does the second one precedes the first one and so forth? Or can you start, and particularly this is important because a lot of people in our audience haven't launched a business as such. Some of them are thinking. So I'm trying to understand what steps and at what stage we can go maybe to strategy and then come back to validation.
It's a great point, because it's not really clear in that model, but because what we set up by asking those questions in the first bit of validation is really a customer feedback loop. We have these customers who are invested in the project, or target customers, and then at each stage of the process we're running our decisions past them. So it's definitely something where you want to keep returning back to validation to get their input and to get their steer. And again, it's a great way to win customers, even for established businesses, to just pick up the phone and speak to their customers about the decisions they're making in their business. It makes them feel part of the company. They get excited about it. They remember who you are. They'll use you first. And we've we've used it actually to win really big clients for our customers, because an e-commerce company that we work with wanted to work with Adidas, so we managed to get head of e-commerce at Adidas to be one of their interview subjects. He then took an interest in the business, learned about what they did, and now Adidas is one of their clients. So
one of the things that you mentioned, Naeem, and still picking from these stages that you mentioned, you also mentioned it is important to seek validation as the first stage, and you said that as we normally advise our community to do, seek validation with your potential customers. But are customers also important when you're devising or designing your strategy and your identity? What are the points where you need to speak to a potential customer or typical customer, and what are the points that you can remove them and sit down and just grind through to build your brand?
It's great question, man. And I would love it if all areas of branding, you could get really good insight from customers, but you can't, because not everyone is a designer, but everyone thinks they are. So our thinking is the bits you want to validate are the initial things like what problems do you face as a customer? What brands do you love? What brands do you hate? What do you care about in the world? Get all those kind of insights, and then you can present the thinking on the kind of brand proposition to them to see if they'll tweak anything. But what's really challenging with brands and trying to get that validation once you've got a brand to show them is that you can't show them perception. You can't show them this experience that you've created. You can only show them, well, this is what our website looks like, or this is what our logo looks like, which is just a small part of the overall picture that you're building. So it's worth, getting their feedback and their input on little things like that, but don't worry so much, about making sure that everything is perfect in the early stage, because the actual validation you're going to get for your brand is how many products or services do you sell, and ultimately, and how happy are your customers, and and how happy are your staff. Those are the metrics that you should be looking at.
Okay. And taking from that, and this is a question now from Yusuf. Thank you, Yusuf, for your question. He said that you advised early startups to bootstrap until they get their first few customers, which makes total sense. But and he's also saying on the other hand that a branding agency can be quite an expensive endeavor for any startup. So at what stage do you suggest that a startup approaches an agency like yours, or what can be done before even approaching a branding agency for one, maybe two co-founders?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen every approach, and there are other branding agencies that work with startups, and their advice is, invest £500,000 from day one, and let's create Nike together, and my thinking is that's completely pointless, because a year down the line you'll discover that your customer isn't who you thought it was, and you'll have to change the whole website, the whole positioning, all of that sort of thing. If you're going to launch a company yourself and you just want to get it off the ground, absolutely, do as much as you can, pull in favors wherever you can. Don't invest in an agency like ours until you've got a proposition that will scale. So our sweet spot really is kind of, and we've learned this over time, but is kind of 20 plus staff. We're kind of looking at, you've got an established brand, you've got an established business, and you now want to start competing in the market, then that's where we can come in and really elevate you. We do work with really early stage startups as well, and we run like a 2-week sprint with a lot of them, but we just won't go as deep. So we'll help with that initial validation and get something that is great and strong and gives you a platform to start growing the business, but ultimately is still flexible enough to change as you grow, because you are going to change. Like I said just then with Notepad, we launched with the idea of we will work with businesses from day one. 3 years later, we work with businesses that have 20 employees or more, because we know that's where our impact is highest.
Okay. And from that, and yet again, a question from me, this is more on the branding 101. So what tools, resources, apps out there that you can recommend? Personally speaking or professionally speaking, I usually use Canva to kind of design a few mockups. But are there the resources, apps, whatnot that you can recommend to our audience?
Yeah, I think so. It's a difficult one because a lot of what we do is quite manual. I do agree with you. Canva's great, and there are, I guess, in the early days, the biggest challenge is you have to be everything all at once. So anything that you can use
Please
to
tell me now.
automate, yeah, anything that you can use to automate your life is going to be a huge bonus. So we've really taken the automation side pretty far, actually. So we have like our proposals send from a piece of software called Proposify, which is linked to our banking software called Zero, which is linked to our invoicing software, which is linked to our project management software. And I don't have to do anything anymore. I just have to sell the project and get it out there. So I recommend any tool really that automates things like Buffer for social media. Anything that can just kind of save you time. Canva is probably the best one for early stage stuff. I would say avoid. I wouldn't say avoid it because you will need to use it, but something like Fiverr, where you can find cheap freelancers, is very risky because, like I said earlier, there's bits of branding I think that you can get by on yourself. You can work out your proposition, you can speak to the customers yourself. When it comes to something like design genuinely does equal success. No, great design does make a product sell. And so obviously it's a budget challenge, but if with Notepad, for example, when I launched it, I did the brand strategy because that's what I'm good at for a digital agency. And in return, they built my website. And I did the brand strategy for a design agency, and in return, that design agency did my brand identity. So like, I'm still into like that whole, service in kind type thing, because I think it's a great way of growing a company without investing huge amounts of cash as well.
So the take is be your own Swiss Army knife and jack of all trades and master of all of them as well.
Yeah.
The questions keep coming. So Yoga actually just texted 5 questions. So thank you, Yoga, for the questions. I'm going to pick 2, then move to the other people, and then return to a few others. So the first one is, how do you stand out in the world of branding agencies when everyone is trying to stand out? So this is Yoga's first question. And the second one is, how much does the vision of the company you work with matter before you decide to work with them? So 2 different questions, but equally very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one was, how do you stand out? Yeah. I mean, it's a real journey that we've been on, particularly the last 12 months, because every agency had to be digital. You had to move online, and every agency had exactly the same level playing field. We all had a website, we all had social media channels, and we all had the world, to try and market to. And it goes back to that thing I was saying. It goes back to working out what is it that you're actually great at, and what is it that your customers actually love you for. And for us, it is that ability to get employees to buy into the brands that we create, and that's something that a lot of agencies aren't very good at, and I've seen that firsthand. So we focus as much as we can on promoting that message, and also to live and breathe that. We do a lot with our own culture to make sure that people don't leave, and have an amazing experience, and that kind of I guess elevates our competitive positioning in the market. So yeah, it's difficult when everyone's selling the same thing, and particularly as well if you've got agencies that design wise are better than us. There's the agencies that charge £1 million for a rebrand, and there's a reason they can charge £1 million, because they're the best designers in the world. So we can't win on design, so we have to win on something else, something unique, and our point of view. We have to have a point of view in the market. And what was the other question? Sorry.
The other question was, how much does the vision of a company you work with matter before you decide working with them?
Do you mean from the questioner? Do you mean as an employee choosing to work for a company, does the vision matter, or do you mean as a potential customer?
I would say to potential customers. So a customer of Notepad, how much does the vision of the company matters to Notepad?
I think it depends on the business. You know, I'm not particularly fussed about Nike's vision. You know, I know that Nike's vision is to, you know, unleash the athlete in all of us. Doesn't really mean much, does it? But you know, whereas something like Elon Musk talking about building, you know, getting people onto Mars and stuff, that's quite exciting and does resonate. But I think at a smaller business level, where vision becomes really important is your customers will genuinely really care about where you're going to take your business. And one of the things we've done that's quite powerful is when we were allowed to go into the studio, we've got this 5-year growth plan, which is really just our vision for the next 5 years, you know, down to how much money we're going to make each month, who we're going to hire, who we're going to work with. And we've printed it out and stuck it on the wall so that when clients come in and they're waiting around with a coffee for their meeting or whatever, they can just look at the vision and see where we're going and feel part of that. And that's that definitely makes people more loyal because they can see where you're going and they want to help you get there.
Okay. So Ghana, thank you for your question. He's saying it's so fascinating and enjoyable to hear professional journey, Naeem. So kudos to Naeem. The question is not so much the question, but before we get the question, every company has a strong purpose or memorable story about it. So at Notepad, what is the untold story? Is there any reason behind the name of the company's name? Is there anything?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. Yeah, and actually, that's one of the things you'll find. You know, we do a lot of brand naming, and we describe it as heaven and hell because creatively, it's heaven. It's really fun coming up with business names, and then logistically, it's hell because every name is taken. And you know, you can never find a website URL or social media handles as you guys found with City Ventures. So yeah, I would say there's quite an interesting story behind Notepad, I guess, in that I spent about 4 days scribbling down names, trying to find something that was interesting and would resonate with our target audience. Couldn't think of anything. And then I was at an event for startups and I was sat in the crowd and I looked around and there was one thing that all the entrepreneurs in the room were doing, and that was scribbling in their notepads. And I was like, we'll just call it Notepad then. And yeah, I didn't even worry about things like trademark. You know, HP have that laptop called the Notepad. We sometimes get emails to say my machine has broken. Can you please help me fix my laptop? Like, people just don't even look at the website; they just email us directly. And at the moment, we're going through the trademark process of 3 years in, which I would recommend doing earlier, by the way, because I thought I should trademark our brand name. But yeah, we got some. When you do it, you register in certain classes, and then you get a letter back from a trademark person, you know, that will say this is fine, but this doesn't work. And one of the things they said didn't work was that you can't possibly own the trademark for Notepad in stationery, because that would mean that you own the patent for every notepad in the world. And I was like, oh yeah, of course.
Okay,
I definitely can't apply for that. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Okay. On the same, now we're moving, and I'm cautious of the time. Would it be okay to take maybe 2-3 more questions?
Yeah, it's all right, mate. We're in lockdown. I'll just be sat here. I'll be sat here all night.
These questions are slightly more personal, meaning it comes from people that are actually trying to do and achieve something. So they might want to pick your expertise on their questions. So one of our attendees is asking, how do you create brand identity or awareness for defense-focused startup that works with a large corporation or governmental organization?
As in so it's a defense company that only works with governmental organizations?
Yeah, and large corporations.
Okay, so ultimately your I guess the large corporation thing is important, but your brand is for your customer. You know, it's the whole reason you're building it, is to try and get on their radar and to try and convince them, you know, to work with you. The challenge with working with corporates and the government, even more challenging actually, we've done a bit of work with them, is getting through the door. You know, just having that initial reason to start a conversation. And it's a bit of a long haul, but the best way we've found of winning work with bigger corporate companies is you've got to offer something of value. So I'm not saying give them something for free or anything like that, but think about what they do in their day to day. So for us, if it was a marketing director, I know that the marketing director of I don't know, RBS at the moment is probably really worried about all of these startup banks, Monzo and Revolut, all of those, amazing companies are coming out of the woodwork and stealing market share. What could RBS be doing, to win back some of those customers? And if you just pull together some of your own thinking, so we, a white paper, an ebook, that sort of thing, find the right person in the company or get an introduction to the right person in the company and just get them to a point where they're willing to have a conversation with you about it, then most of them will. One thing I will say as a an aside and a benefit for all of us at the moment of this horrible experience of being in lockdown is people are so much more willing to pick up the phone and have a conversation at the moment because they're bored at home, and marketing directors I've never been able to speak to have agreed to do a Zoom with me because they want to talk about something else in their monotonous day. So it's a good time to be focusing on corporates. The government it's a very difficult procurement process. It's always down to tendering. Tendering's really hard because you won't have a huge amount of case study and experience behind you. So it's about starting small. That's the way we've contracted with them. Find something that you can do, but it's a low key budget. If you're under the procurement threshold, so they'll typically have to go out to tender if it's over £5,000. If you can offer something less than £5,000 that they need, they won't have to bother with the tendering side of things. So it's an easier way in. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. And also if it's a digital thing that you're selling, get your cyber essentials certificate because you have to have that. We found out a while ago.
Okay. Not the wrong way, the right way.
No, just like you have to have that to work with us.
So another question, this time from a musician. So he actually starts by Edmund. Thank you, Edmund, for your question. He actually mentions Apple as being very disruptive by shifting the focus of technology into the experience with technology, which was a very clever move, as we all know. So what would you suggest that a musician focus in an attempt to elevate his branding and also to help with sales with a new album or with a new experience?
I think it's an interesting one because, and this is so strange, but our new designer we've just hired was a very successful musician. So he's played Glastonbury and he's got 2.5 million listeners on Spotify and stuff. So I talk to him about this stuff all the time. What did you, as a designer that's moved into branding, coming from a music background, what did you do to build the music business? And for him, and I guess it comes down to the sort of music you produce and that sort of thing, but he said the best way of growing their own awareness was just definitely community kind of focused marketing. So sharing your the stories of what you're up to, having a really personalized newsletter that goes out to your fans every now and again, doing creative things with music. But music's a really difficult one because if you look at someone like Ed Sheeran, who's got to a point where all he has to do is tweet the letter A and he'll get 6 million retweets. He's gone so far with people believing in his brand that he's got there. But I guess cut through in music is very similar to building a business brand in that it's about consistency. So you have to have a consistent style, a consistent message. People are buying into that lifestyle, aren't they? We all want to be our favorite musician. So find what it is that you believe in and stick to that approach, and eventually your tribe will find you.
Moving away from the red ocean strategy to the blue ocean strategy. They're actually going to check out that book. It sounds an interesting read. Last question, Naeem, and thank you so much for your time. So what is the most important creative trait you think for a founder to have?
I'd say it's learning. Never stop learning. I think the key is, it's one of our values at Notepad actually, is just is never stop learning, and I only hire people that have that mentality, because I've seen amazing creative directors suddenly just become rubbish at their job because they think they've peaked. They think they've learned everything there is to know about creative direction, and they don't need to learn anything else because they are the expert. And they don't care about your opinion, that sort of thing. My whole approach with building businesses is the whole thing's a learning journey. You know, every mistake we make, every decision we make opens up a new opportunity to learn. And it's not like we write down, you know, what are the things we learned from that experience. It's just that your instinct is then shaped by the things that happen to you. And I've always just kind of put myself in the deep end of these experiences to a really good case in point. You know, we're at 8 people now. We're a sustainable, profitable business. Why should we grow? But it's because there's a few reasons. Like, one is I've learned, I think, how to grow an agency from 0 to 8 people. So I've done that and learned what it takes to do that. I don't know how to do it from 8 to 30. So that's the next learning experience for me. And that's why I continue to want to grow the business, because I want to be exposed to, learning about layers of management and having a board and all of those sorts of things are just interesting to me. So I'd say learning. Never stop learning.
Never stop learning. And with that, we'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll see Naeem in a year's time with maybe 30 people or maybe more part of Notepad Studio. Join me in thanking Naeem for his time. So Naeem, thank you so much for your insights, for your time. Thank you everyone that was in our audience asking all those questions. And don't forget to join us one last time this term for the final startup seminar next Tuesday. Until then, good evening, everyone. Stay safe, sanitize, and be cool. And thank you so much, everyone. And
cheers, guys.
Again.
Thank you, Rui, and thank you, everyone else. Thanks for your time.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.